empowerment policy. He said he has not seen DA's proposals, and if anybody wants an amendment to the BEE legislation, they must table their proposals, and that must be taken for discussion in Parliament. He said the current BEE framework remains a key instrument in addressing vast economic imbalances.
Something's happening in the shadows of Johannesburg, quiet, deliberate, and unsettling for those who once held Africa's purse strings. South Africa has just pulled off what few expected. A $500 million funding initiative that has global lenders lining up, not to dictate terms, but to meet them. It's not charity, it's a strategy. Because when Africa's most industrialized nation decides it will no longer borrow on anyone's conditions, the question shifts from how much money was raised to how much power was reclaimed. And that is what's really making the world nervous. But what does this mean for Africa? Let's find out. In history, when power doesn't announce itself, it rearranges the room quietly. What just happened in South Africa is one of those moments. No explosions, no speeches, just a single statement from the National Treasury, and the world suddenly realized something fundamental had shifted in the order of things. The Treasury confirmed it had received over 100 international proposals for its $500 million foreign currency funding initiative. At first glance, it sounds procedural, another government raising capital. But to anyone who understands how global finance works, this was seismic. Because this wasn't a desperate appeal for loans, it was an open audition. South Africa had extended a hand, and instead of creditors tightening their grip, they rushed forward with offers. Behind that calm announcement lies a deeper story. For decades, Africa's financial narratives were written elsewhere, in Washington boardrooms, Parisian ministries, and London trading floors. But this time, the script wasn't printed overseas. It was written in Pretoria. The $500 million target wasn't just a figure. It was a signal that Africa's most industrialized nation is done negotiating from weakness. To understand why this matters, you have to look beyond the number. Because South Africa isn't chasing liquidity, it's testing authority. It's saying to the financial world, we no longer measure progress by what you lend. We measure it by how we decide to borrow. The response was immediate. Over 100 proposals poured in from global lenders, from established investment houses to boutique institutions, from ESG-linked funds to independent financiers seeking a foothold in Africa's next growth chapter. Some came with environmental incentives, others with social impact clauses, but nearly all came with one message. Global investors now see South Africa as a marketplace of stability and innovation, not risk and rescue. That's what caught analysts off guard. The global economy, after all, isn't in a forgiving mood. Interest rates are high, debt markets are tight, and developing nations are facing repayment crises. Yet in that same climate, investors saw opportunity, not danger, in South Africa's offer. Why? Because the Treasury isn't improvising. It's orchestrated. This initiative was designed months in advance, quietly and methodically. Announced in July 2025, it was never about chasing headlines. It was about sending a message to the capital markets that Africa can finance its own vision without crawling through the corridors of the IMF. The decision to target innovative instruments, bilateral term loans, structured notes, and private placements showed that Pretoria wasn't looking for cash, it was looking for control. And that control, subtle as it is, changes everything. Because every lender who participates in this program is operating under South Africa's terms, its laws, its timelines, its framework. For once, the leverage isn't sitting in New York or London, it's sitting in Johannesburg. That's not just symbolic, that's systemic. In the corridors of global finance, credibility is currency. And this move just raised South Africa's credit in a way no bond rating ever could. It proved that investors now believe in the country's fiscal discipline, its industrial potential, and its strategic maturity. They aren't lending out of pity or pressure. They're lending because they trust the process. But make no mistake, this calm confidence didn't come overnight. It's been years in the making, forged in the heat of economic downgrades, power shortages, and social unrest. And that's what makes this funding initiative so unexpected. It rose not from abundance, but from adversity. The real intrigue, however, isn't in how many offers came in. It's in why they came now. What has changed in South Africa's economic posture that made the world suddenly eager to lend where it once hesitated? What is inside this model that makes capital chase the borrower? The answer lies in the structure of this initiative and the quiet rebellion embedded within it. For decades, African economies have been told there is only one respectable way to access global capital, through the Eurobond market or the International Monetary Fund. The formula was predictable. Issue a bond in dollars, pay interest in dollars, and live under the shadow of Western credit ratings. These tools were presented as neutral, even benevolent, but in truth they came with invisible strings, policy constraints, structural reforms, and ceilings on how nations could spend their own money. South Africa's new approach doesn't just tweak that formula, it flips it upside down. The Treasury's model invites multiple forms of financing, from bilateral term loans and private placements to structured instruments linked to environmental and social goals. It's no longer a one-size-fits-all borrowing model dictated by global norms. It's a marketplace of ideas, each deal negotiated on equal footing. That's the essence of the rebellion, subtle, intelligent, and almost philosophical. Because this isn't about rejecting Western capital, it's about refusing Western conditions. By designing instruments tied to South Africa's own sustainability goals, the Treasury has ensured that global investors can no longer separate profit from accountability. You want returns? Fine. But your returns must serve our development, not your geopolitics. That's not defiance, that's evolution. The structure itself forces the investor to respect the borrower, and that's what investors found compelling. For the first time, they're not buying exposure to a fragile economy. They're buying into a system that manages risk through design. But there's a deeper layer here. South Africa's economic planners have understood something that most nations still haven't: the power of psychological independence in finance.